12 Mirage fighter jets, close to 1,000 kgs of laser-guided explosives and 21 minutes. India set the stage for New India's zero-tolerance terror policy this morning and pulverized the across-the-border Jaish-e-Mohammed terror camp with almost 300 terrorists being run by JEM chief's brother-in-law.
This facility at Balakot was headed by Maulana Yusuf Azhar, alias Ustad Ghori, the brother-in-law of Masood Azhar, chief of the JEM.
The message is loud and clear. New India will now weed out terrorism as it deems fit.
मेरा वचन है भारत मां को तेरा शीश झुकने नहीं दूंगा।
मुझे खुशी है कि सभी प्रतिनिधियों ने एक स्वर में एकजुटता का प्रदर्शन किया।
This is the most decisive shift in India's policy in engaging with Pakistan and the war on terror. In the past, India has limited its response to a diplomatic offensive. In fact, since the 1971 India-Pakistan war, our jets have never even entered Pakistan's space to destroy terror camps. A nervous Pakistan that has never accepted the presence of terror camps on its soil is obviously now sticking to its usual rhetoric of outright denial. But for the families of the Pulwama martyrs and thousands others, this is the retribution India needed. A tough stand that would eventually wipe out terrorism.
जो मेरा पति का विस्फोट किया, उसका बदला लिया, हम बहुत खुश हैं, गर्व भी हैं।
जो मेरे पति शहीद हुए उनका दर्द तो जिंदगी भर ही रहेगा, लेकिन 1-2% दर्द कुछ कम हुआ है।
Is the cross-border airstrike proof of India's decisive shift in policy towards Pakistan? Let's debate.
Well, there are several questions to be answered, including those coming in from our viewers today. But yes, it is a day to appreciate the skill that has been displayed by the Indian Air Force. Joining me on the show right now to begin with is Air Marshal Jaish-e-Mohammed. He is not only the Vice Air Chief of the Vice Chief of the Air Staff. He joins me right now. Good evening. He also commanded this exact squadron, Squadron 7, the Battle Axes. Air Marshal Inamdar, thank you so much for joining us and good evening. There are a lot of viewers who would be curious about this particular aircraft that we're talking about suddenly today, about the kind of activity that took place this morning. So my first question to you is this: what is the Mirage like as an aircraft? What's it like to fly it? What's it like to command Squadron 7, which I understand is among the best of the best in the Indian Air Force? Air Marshal Inamdar, can you hear me? We seem to have some problem with that audio. I apologize to my viewers, but we will come back to that conversation. Vinay, obviously, you know, this entire thing that's played out today, we've had enough people sort of analyze the whole thing, but it does prove that the Indian Air Force, both in equipment and in training and in skill, is far superior to anything that Pakistan has right now.
No doubt, and I think that comes from relentless training. I mean, even in peacetime, and remember, Indian Air Force has not been used for an offensive act since Kargil in that sense. The Indian Air Force, just as the Army, carries out relentless training all this while. There are scenarios that are practiced, there are maneuvers that are practiced, there is a lot of dummy testing and flying and various kind of other maneuvers that are practiced all the time. And all this hard practice and a real life simulated condition practice that happens over the years repeatedly comes in handy at a time like this, where you have a very short amount of time to plan and execute an operation, and you're able to go there and do it with precision and come back absolutely unscathed. So this tells you the remarkable ability of the discipline and the skill that the Indian Air Force pilots, which are perhaps one of the best in the world, and they can display that at any time at a very short notice as well.
Right, we have other guests with us at this point. Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat, joins us along with Vinay Tiwari, who's in the studio with me. We also have Manu Pabi, is the senior editor of the Economic Times, Saikat Tata, who joins us as well, along with Narendra Taneja and Air Marshal Matheshwaran, who will be part of this conversation going forward. Prabhu Dayal, here's my question to you. This obviously changes how we deal with terrorism, and this puts India in a different category altogether. A lot of our viewers have been asking if we expect any sort of, reaction from Pakistan. One of the questions that did come in from Vivek was, is it possible to know how many terrorists were eliminated? Now, here's the thing, and we have to bring this up. It is our responsibility as journalists. On one hand, we had the press conference that was addressed by, by the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Gokhale. While he did say that several terrorists were eliminated, he did not release a number. The numbers that have been doing the rounds in the media of 300 or 500 or 600 are source-based from government. So there is no confirmation right now on how many terrorists, in terms of pure numbers, have been eliminated. What would your answer be to that question? Do we know how many, or how could we find out how many?
Well, my answer is that the only way we could have a figure is on the basis of intelligence reports. And I'm sure that before we took the step of launching this air strike on the launching pad of Jaish-e-Mohammed, we had done our homework very well, and we knew exactly how many terrorists were housed in that place. So if the government is saying that 300 terrorists were killed, or whatever number, that must be based on intelligence reports that had been received in advance. Now the question is, why was such a facility located so close to the line of control? It was located there because these terrorist outfits are hand in glove with the Pakistan Army. Otherwise, the Pakistan Army would not allow the existence of such structures so close to the line of control. In fact, it is well established that these terror outfits like the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, are proxies of the Pakistan Army. And I think by striking at the facility where such terrorists were housed, a message has been very clearly sent to the Pakistan Army that we will hit your proxies, and if you escalate, then be prepared, we could hit you too. The Pakistan Army has always taken it for granted that they are more aggressive, that India is pussyfooted, that somehow we will not retaliate. I think time and again now the message is going across that we will hit much harder than what they expect, and moreover, for us, this is just the beginning. We can continue doing that. Believe me, the policy of the Pakistan Army is not going to change. An earlier panelist during the earlier discussion had said that it's the army in Pakistan which rules the roost. The fact of the matter is, the Pakistan Army is extremely hostile to India. I have served in that country. I have dealt with Pakistan in various capacities. And I know for a fact that the hostility of the Pakistan Army will not change. Imran Khan, when he became Prime Minister, promised a Naya Pakistan. Now that Naya Pakistan, whatever form it takes, will never be a Pakistan where the army becomes less hostile to India. It will never be a Pakistan where these terror outfits are not used as proxies by the Pakistan Army. So, as far as we are concerned, we have to be extremely vigilant for what will come back to us, and we have to continue hitting much harder than what they can expect or what they want us to.
Yes, in fact, we have Air Marshal S.G. Inamdar with us right now. I understand he can hear me better. For a quick introduction to our viewers, Air Marshal Inamdar was the former Vice Chief of the Air Staff, former Commander-in-Chief of the Eastern Air Command, and also former Commanding Officer of the 7th Squadron, the battle axis that took part in this morning's Mirage 2000 precision airstrike that we've spent most of the day, or the better part of the day, talking about. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us. Obviously, our viewers are curious about the aircraft in question. They're curious about the Squadron 7, which we understand is among the best of the best in the Indian Air Force. What was it like to command Squadron 7? Why do you think the Mirage is particularly picked for this particular action and not, say, the Sukhoi? The Mirage, we understand, was bought in 1983. Is it still the best aircraft or specifically designed for something like this?
The Mirage is a multi-role aircraft, and this particular role, the ground attack strike role, the Mirage has done so well. Take, for example, the Kargil conflict. Tiger Hill was hit for the first time and probably didn't have to hit again after the Mirages hit it with laser bombs. It's a very lethal weapon, very accurate weapon, and the only way the Sangars could be, the Sangars, what do you call them, those on top of the ridges, could be tackled, struck, was with the Mirages. Iron bombs wouldn't have that kind of accuracy or damage effect. It is a very good aircraft all around. The sensors, the electronics, the avionics, the weapon carriage, the accuracy, the range, you name it. It's a beautiful aircraft. And it's been upgraded now almost constantly, especially in the last few years.
I do want to ask you this. I'm sure you spent also a fair amount of time actually looking into all the information that's come out of today's strike. We understand that the AWACS were flying before and after. We also understand that the Mirage is a specific capability that can block GPS targeting, and it cannot be detected. Could you tell us what about this technology makes the aircraft special?
The technology that has gone into the Mirage from the beginning, from the time it was inducted into the Air Force, and over a period of time has been upgraded, modified, upgraded. It has very, very powerful electronic surveillance equipment, very powerful eavesdropping equipment, very powerful ESM equipment, electronic support measures, ECCM equipment. It's quite a storehouse of a combination of all these technologies to handle the threats today and maybe some of the threats tomorrow.
Well, I was reading through what this aircraft does have. We also understand it has something called a digital scene matching area correlator that allows it to find a target and match it to a preloaded or a pre-given photograph of that target. So it's the precision of targeting is brilliant. And we do understand that the Defense Minister of Pakistan turned around and said we weren't able to detect this aircraft because it was dark. So quite clearly here, the Indian Air Force has not just embarrassed the Pakistani Air Force, but outdoes it in every way.
I don't know what was more, embarrassment or fear. Either way, the Mirage is a very, very formidable adversary to cope with for the Pakistanis. And the more the Mirage is explored and exploited by the Indian Air Force, the surer you're off, one is off positive results. The proof of the pudding is in eating it. What happened in Kargil is going to happen now. It's happened this morning. It is a very powerful platform every which way.
So, we do know that the Air Force had made this offer to various governments in the past at various occasions, saying this is something we can do. Here is a plan, allow us to do it. This is the first time really that any government has given the Air Force the nod or the go-ahead to go out and do it. Do you believe this changes the way India will be viewed in the future? This changes the way the Indian Air Force will be viewed globally in the future?
Your defense preparedness or your ability to strike or to strike fear into the enemy's hearts has two components. One is the intrinsic capability of the Air Force or the aircraft system that you're operating, and the will to operate that system or that capability, put that capability to use. The capability has always been there, and as the Chief said a few days back, a week back, we are very capable and we are very prepared. It's the will that was lacking sometimes, was not lacking sometimes, but that is a decisive factor in how powerful the system is, how powerful the Air Force is. Capability is always there. It's the will that sometimes lacking, and the will is in sync with the capability. Oh, it's a lethal combination. And that's what happened this time, I guess, because it happened in Kargil too.
Well, so please stay with us as I open up this conversation to the rest of my guests as well. And of course, our deep gratitude and congratulations to the Indian Air Force for the skill that it has displayed. Vinay, obviously this precision airstrike that the Air Marshal was talking about changes a lot of things, but I first want to focus on the huge embarrassment it puts Pakistan in, not just the Pakistani army, but the Pakistan government that has been making these jingoistic statements over the last several weeks saying, what do you think, Pakistan will just be sitting back if you attack? We will be forced to give you an answer and we're capable of giving you an answer. Caught on the back foot, caught napping, and not even able to detect our aircraft.
Yes, and I think for them it's a huge embarrassment because they have a domestic constituency too, which they have to talk to. Remember, Imran Khan, as a politician, has had the backing of the radical elements during campaigning. He was openly backed by Taliban all through. He's not the Imran Khan that a lot of Indians know while he was playing cricket on the ground.
Yes, and that's important to remind our viewers of.
Yes. He's a very different Imran Khan, and he's got that reputation now to live up to in many ways because the Pakistanis have rewarded him for that hardline position that he took, whether the elections were genuine or not. But the fact is, he is a hardliner. And now this is extremely embarrassing because for a hardliner Prime Minister to be hammered like this within their own territory with no clue of what has happened is a deeply embarrassing thing for them. And I think this is where perhaps the Pakistani military and the establishment will have a tough time answering. In fact, as we speak, Pakistan's Major General Asif Ghafoor, who's also the spokesperson, he's just in fact given this dramatic statement, wait for our surprise. That's what he says. Get ready to be surprised. This is his statement just now to Pakistani journalists who asked him this question. He said the response will come. Wait for it. We have our own plans.
But should we also point out at this point that you should never tell someone that you're going to surprise them?
Yeah, and that tells you the pressure they're under.
Yes.
It tells you that they have a pressure. They have to address their own country. Their journalists were very hostile today in the press conferences. They were asking very tough questions and they really had no answers to that.
Saikat Datta, South Asia editor of Asia Times. Saikat, thank you for joining us. Obviously, Pakistan under tremendous pressure, both internally and externally. But if we look at what's going on internally, they've had trouble answering any of the questions that were asked of them today.
See, post Operation Neptune Spare, which the US SEALs carried out in May 2011, the reaction of the Pakistanis at that time was that, look, most of our radars are pointed towards the east, which is towards India, which is why the Americans managed to surprise us, but we will not be able to be surprised any further. So in some ways, we have to understand that what the Indian Air Force did today was not really to kill too many militants or terrorists in the Jaish-e-Mohammed camp. Nor was it to show what is the power of the Indian Air Force, etc. I think the real message was that India is willing to change the threshold completely, unlike what it has done in the past. That's point number one. Point number two, the fact that despite whatever claims the Pakistanis have made since the last operation by the Americans, that you could go so deep into a province which is the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and carry out an operation like this is another message that has gone that India is not only willing, but India is also has the ability to do something like this. Also remember, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is in some ways the main base of Prime Minister Imran Khan. This is a province which his party has been ruling for a long time, and it also sends, among other things, a message directly to him. But also a word of caution, which is that unlike the Uri surgical strikes, the one thing that nobody should be doing right now, especially in India, is to turn this into a political fiasco and use this for votes. Because the moment you do that, it puts enormous pressure on the soldiers and the fighter pilots and the military, and it actually ends up reducing our strategic options, and that should not be done at all.
Well, we also have Air Marshal Matheshwaran, who's with us, joining us out of Cochin. So thank you for joining us. Obviously, and we've seen this play out today, at least the opposition stood with the government. There was absolutely no disagreement in any way about the action that was taken. There was appreciation for the armed forces, specifically the Air Force. So far, at least, nobody has gone down that route of playing politics with this. But it is an important message that we've sent not just externally, but also internally to the people of India, that this is something that we are no longer going to tolerate. Air Marshal Matheshwaran, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Faye. Absolutely. It's not about, what you have destroyed on ground and how many people you've killed, etc. It's more about demonstrating a resolve that India has changed tack. It will respond to the terrorist strategy that Pakistan has been following for the last 30 years with a very firm application of force, and it's going to make it harder for Pakistan and make the pain count much more for Pakistan. So this is something we should have done long back. We should have done in 2001 on the aftermath of the attack on Parliament. We should have done when Mumbai attack took place in 2008. I think it's never too late. I think all congratulations to the political leadership to have taken that final decision. We've crossed a Rubicon of depending on the air power to strike immediately. And this is something that should be done. It is not enough to demonstrate just once. I think we should now indicate that this will become the strategy and we will not hesitate to apply force where it hurts them most. And I think we should just target the terrorist outfits, track the terrorist leaders, put a price on their head and get them out at any cost. I think we need to, stick with this policy consistently and do not, go about, using it as a political, game playing between the parties. I think that should be stopped. And I'm glad that all political parties are together in this. We should analyze what has happened and we should expect the Pakistanis to react. And the whole thing is about calling the bluff of the Pakistanis, retaining escalation control with us. The nuclear bluff should be called and show them that we will hit them where it matters most if they try and resort to the kind of things that they've done so far for the last 30 years.
Mr. Taneja with the BJP joins us as well. Mr. Taneja, obviously the opposition stood with government all through the day. There was, in fact, widespread appreciation for the armed forces, specifically the Air Force, and the government for the will and the ability that was displayed in doing this so quickly, catching Pakistan by surprise and bringing all of our pilots back completely safe. So it is a testimony to the rest of the world that we can set aside our political differences when it comes to it.
Oh, yes. I mean, if you look at the history in 1971, when the then Prime Minister took that decision, to go into what is now known as Bangladesh, just dig into archive and see the statement made by BJP leaders, most particularly by, late Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So, I mean, has been the tradition of the country when it comes to when our country is under attack, we are all united. So today it's not about BJP or Congress or CPM and all that. It's about India. It's about our country. It's about the Republic of India. And even the decision, as you know, that this is the way we look at it in BJP and the government is a non-military, action that we had to take is more kind of preemptive because we knew these are terror bases there. We know they were preparing to, strike not only Jammu and Kashmir, but in different parts of the country. And we were left with no other alternative to go and take this action. And as you know, under the international law, I mean, it's a country, if you're facing a threat from such terrorist groups, you can take action. It's permitted under the India. That's precisely what we have done. And of course, salute to valor and professionalism of Indian Air Force, in particular armed forces, and the very decisive and strong leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So, and he's a Prime Minister for everybody, whether you are in Congress or CPM or BJP and all that. He's the Prime Minister of the Republic of India. So he's this very decisive leadership and very strong leadership, and results are there for everybody to see. But as he said, it's about the country, and it's a message to Pakistan. It's a message to Pakistan that don't mess up, don't stop doing what you have been doing all these years, all these decades, in fact. Otherwise, the India today of 2019 is very different India. And we will, if required, we'll take action. They are issuing threats and they're talking the way they are talking. And some leaders are even talking about, all kind of stuff, including nuclear and all that. India is prepared. The people, 1.30 billion Indian, our armed forces, our government, people, every single Indian is prepared. So, and they should know that. We are prepared.
Yes, we are prepared. Manu Pabi, does this change, of course, everything going forward? Because now this is the country that we are. This is the response that we will give out. So any further escalation, and including Pakistan saying things like, wait, we will also surprise you. The response to that as well will now be aggressive.
The interesting part here is that Pakistan's retaliation options are very limited. See, we have not struck a Pakistani military target. That's why the important statement by the Foreign Secretary is saying that we had done a non-military preemptive strike. So when you're not striking the military of Pakistan and you've struck non-state actors, the Pakistani establishment has not much of a choice on retaliation because they don't admit that they have terrorists on their soil. So if somebody dies there, they cannot really, take revenge for that. So their retaliation, we are expecting, would be similarly to what followed, say, the surgical strikes. Remember after surgical strikes, 2 months after that, there was another terror attack in Nagrota, in which an army camp was attacked. So Pakistan's favorite tool for retaliation seems to be to use its non-state actors. So we could see a lot of more aggression on the LOC. We could see maybe more terror attacks sponsored by Pakistan. But what has really changed is that, by bringing in this air dynamic, we have changed the whole way that we rule the LC with them. As of today, it was all about ground-based attacks. It was about, army troops facing each other. Bringing in the air element has done a surprise. It has put the Pakistani Air Force and the Pakistani military off balance. Now, what they do with it has to be seen. The other option they have is, post-Kargil, when we lost a few fighter jets, we lost a fighter jet and a couple of helicopters, we took down a Pakistani naval aircraft, the Atlantic, that was after the Kargil war. So a similar action could be planned by Pakistan. Remember, we have a lot of helicopters and small aircraft flying around the LC. We have troops to support there. So they have a few options on the table. But yes, escalation is most likely going to happen. But I would not imagine that they would strike an Indian military target, because then that would mean an act of war. And that's an escalation that can't be controlled by either side then, which could blow into full-scale conflict.
Well, Mr. Prabhudayal, I just want to bring one piece of information to the notice of the audience as well. The acting spokesperson of France's Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs has made a statement saying France recognizes India's legitimacy to ensure its security against cross-border terrorism, and it asks Pakistan to put an end to its operations of terrorist groups established in its territory. So this is a very, very strongly worded, statement coming from France. Mr. Dayal, this now, obviously, the West will begin to now give us their statements, because this is just about waking up and hitting the office at this point. But this, as the first statement to come from Europe, is strongly worded in our favor.
Well, the French have already indicated how they think about the whole matter, because they had said that they would sponsor a resolution in the UN Security Council against the Jaish-e-Mohammed, and they did so. Of course, the United Kingdom and the US also joined them. The French have also been very helpful, because they have been putting pressure on Pakistan in the Financial Action Task Force. Now, as regards this question of Pakistan retaliating, of course we know that they want to retaliate. This is the be-all and end-all of their policy. The Pakistan army has its declared policy of wanting to inflict 1,000 cuts on India, and all these terrorist outfits which act as its proxies say quite the same thing. We know that they want to hurt us, but we should hurt them many times more. Saikat, my very dear friend, said that the intention was not to kill, it was only to change the perspective. I think that if they kill 30 of our soldiers or 40 of our soldiers, we should hit back big time and kill 300 of theirs. That's the only language which Pakistanis understand. If they inflict 1,000 cuts on us, they should know that we will inflict 1,000,000 cuts on them. And I think the message has started to go across, and the more and more they suffer in all respects, economically, politically, by being isolated, and militarily, the more the chances are that they will come to their senses. Otherwise, the Pakistan army, which is so hostile to India, will continue to work hand in glove with these terrorist outfits to try and hurt us. An earlier panelist in your discussion had said that we have to be very vigilant. They can carry out little attacks and terrorist acts all over the country. Of course, every Indian has to be vigilant, because we can't afford to let the guard down. But we have to take every possible step to send the message across to Pakistan that if you try to hurt us, the costs will be too heavy for you. And unless we do it in a very, very determined fashion, Pakistan will think that this sort of attack is one-off, and they can continue to pursue that policy of promoting covert warfare or terrorist warfare against us.
Yes. Air Marshal Inamdar, obviously when Pakistan says that they are going to surprise us and we should probably wait for a surprise from them, every possible retaliatory action would have been weighed in as part of intelligence, as part of the planning. Do you expect right now for all agencies to be on high alert? And what would that look like?
You know, you can't put an agency or a particular wing of the armed force on a perpetual alert. It loses the very impact of alertness. There's a limit to which you can keep a elastic stretched. But once you keep it stretched for a long time, it loses what they call the Young's modulus comes in, and then you don't have any elasticity left. You have to depend on intelligence inputs and periodically engage in activities like war games, exercises, activations to convey an impression that you are brushing up your alertness, brushing up your preparedness, your readiness for war very regularly, and you're not letting your guard down. That is different from being on a 24-hour alert 7 days a week, 12 months a year. You can't do that. Even the Americans don't do that on North Korean border. They have a stand down there, they have a stand to there, but there's a pattern to it. They can't be on a permanent alert, permanent standby for operations. Within these two, there is a space in which one can be alert, one can be watchful and be ready for instant action, what one of the chiefs had called a cold start. That's possible.
And what stage of readiness do you believe our forces would be at this point?
As much as one could expect them to be when the retaliation by Pakistan is only to be expected. How, when and where, it's something that time will tell, but that there will be a riposte, that there will be a retaliation, there will be a reaction, it's a given. To expect it not to be would be living in a fool's paradise. And this, I'm quite certain, with our experience, hindsight to the last 40 years, no country can do it. India certainly will not do it, and India hasn't done it. I'm quite certain about it. You can't let your guard down. Not with the way the Pakistani army is built. Their only ambition in life is to sort of sort out India. In fact, a friend of mine once told me in one of my visits overseas in these conferences that Kashmir is not an issue between you and India, you and Pakistan, Pakistan and India. Even if you give Pakistan on a silver platter to Kashmir on a silver platter to Pakistan, the army will find something else to keep having a raison d'etre for it to be in existence. It is not just Kashmir, it's the very creed of Pakistan army. The problem is not the Pakistani state, as I see it, is the Pakistan army. Unless something happens to that, something is done to that, this problem will never go away. It cannot be wished away.
It's very clearly said, and Vinay, we must acknowledge that the Pakistan army has always been very powerful. It's more powerful than in other countries. It's a volatile state. It's always gone back and forth between martial law. Where do you see, or how do you see the Pakistan army actually reacting now to this embarrassment and being part of obviously they would be at the forefront of any sort of retaliation that's being planned?
Yes, and the oldest joke about that is that every country has an army, Pakistani army has a country. So that pretty much tells you the relationship that the Pakistani army has with its establishment. I mean, they run that place, there's no doubt about that. Even when there has been intermittent periods of civilian rule, it's pretty much the army that runs and decides everything. It's just way too powerful. And obviously, a lot of the policy decision making and other activities that happen there are guided by Pakistan army and the ISI, which is really an extension of them. They're not really separate, they're part of the army in that sense. And that's why, but I think General Saab said it very rightly. Bad habits return, and I don't think we should get complacent. They have a tendency of coming back. So just because we've gone in and attacked Balakot doesn't mean we've seen the last of it. I mean, they are going to come back with something new because that is the only way in which they can survive and retain the relevance.
And the other perspective we have to give our audience this evening is that while Imran Khan will show up to a briefing after an attack like this wearing a leather jacket and a red scarf and, you know, he's all swagger that he used to be on the cricket field, this is not that same man. This is a man who is backed by extreme, arms of terror by the Taliban while he was was, while he was campaigning. We have to be very careful about how we deal with this man.
Yes, and also because, look, he has no real administrative experience. I mean, he's a newer politician in that sense. I mean, he's not like, say, hypothetically Nawaz Sharif, who's been there and done that for many, many years. I mean, he's a new politician who hasn't administered anything. He's got no administrative experience at all. And the way and the manner in which he came to power in Pakistan pretty much tells you that he's almost a hostage to a lot of other kinds of elements, including the army, and I would even say some of the non-state forces that exist in that country. He's pretty much a hostage to them. So he's unpredictable in that sense, and the kind of pressure that he perhaps has from them will determine the next course of action.
Saikat Datta, the balance between Pakistan's Prime Minister and the army at this point, how important is that going to be to any sort of, let's say, surprises that they're planning for us?
So what's interesting is that Pakistan has made it very clear that they will call a meeting of the National Command Authority tomorrow. So this is a fair...
Yes, Saikat Datta, please, go ahead.
So this is a fair amount of indication that the Pakistanis... Yes, they've called for a meeting of the National Command Authority tomorrow, and as a result, this is a fair indication that they are very keen to retaliate. You also have to understand, as Vinay has been talking about this, that the Pakistani army uses India as a bogey for its own existential purposes to a large extent. So any kind of an attack of this nature raises a lot of questions and creates doubts in the minds of the Pakistani citizens about the capabilities of its military. And this is something that they will be acutely aware of. And to ensure that these kind of doubts are set aside, I'm sure the Pakistani army would be thinking of ways and means to regain some of the prestige that they have lost today. And as we have seen during the campaign, Prime Minister Imran Khan has always been sort of pro-Taliban. He's been speaking about the Taliban. He's also been fairly close to the military. And in many ways, he was used by the Pakistani army to edge out Nawaz Sharif and the other civilian parties which were there. So there is a close relationship, and it's a symbiotic relationship. So that will create a completely new mix as far as India is concerned.
Absolutely.
Yes, Marshal Inanda, forgive me, you wanted to add something, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted, I agree with him entirely. If the Kashmir issue is a no issue tomorrow, if there's no bone of contention between the two countries, Pakistan army has a problem existing. They will have no reason to be around. And they would be facing demobilization big time, because there is no reason for Pakistan to be even have an army or a navy or air force the way it has today, if there is no conflict between India and Pakistan. I don't think they can ever afford to do that. And having tasted blood once or twice since Iskandar Mirza's time of running the country, being the biggest beneficiaries of the state, the biggest stockholders on the Karachi Stock Exchange, biggest real estate holders in Pakistan, everything. Now, that will go, and that they can't afford to do. There's no way they will let it go, and any Prime Minister comes to power in Pakistan, it's academic for the Pakistan army. He'll only front for them as well as he can in the terms they dictate, the army dictates. Tomorrow, if Imran Khan wants to buck the army chief, who the de facto head honcho of Pakistan, I don't think Imran Khan can be lost too long. Not at all. They'll not show him the door, but it'll make it irrelevant. Do something. And he knows it. He knows it very well. What he also knows is that being a very fearsome fast bowler in his earlier years, throwing that little red cherry at the batsman at a furious speed, he was only going to hurt the batsman, or the batsman is going to hurt the ball in terms of throwing it to the boundary. In this case, the batsman he's throwing the weapons at or ball at, he's going to come and hit him back. That doesn't happen in cricket. That sort of reports to his personal harm or body harm or the party harm. That doesn't happen in cricket. The ball only gets thrashed to the boundary. That's a different ball game. I think the right guy in the wrong place.
Right guy in the wrong place. So the wrong guy in the wrong place. Manu Pabi, senior editor with the Economic Times, do you agree right now that Imran Khan finds himself in a difficult situation, and all the experience from the cricket field is not going to come in handy here? He possibly shouldn't use the experience from the cricket field.
So clearly, he will not be calling the shots on this one. It's going to be the Pakistani military out and out. For them, even the denials that nothing happened, the kind of pressure that they are in to retaliate is humongous. Remember that the strike took place at a place which is very close to Abbottabad. They have already got one strike there, one from the other border. So the public is asking questions, and that is what they need to answer. But again, as we said earlier, their options are limited. But I think in this case, if they do something overt, the escalation then will not be in their hands. And the Indian side at this moment, the way that they have reacted to these terror attacks of the past, they are willing to go all out. So I think that all is weighing into both sides. It's a game, it's a mind game between India and Pakistan. But on the Pakistani side, it's definitely the army chief and the ISI establishment that is doing all the thinking. Imran Khan, in this case, would just be somebody who would say the right thing at the right time and keep it at that. At the same time, of course, we have to see what kind of talk has been on in the Western world. You talked about the French statement. Remember, there's been no condemnation for the Indian strikes. And in fact, diplomatic sources have told us that they are more or less okay with this because they think that India reserves the right to retaliate. So when there's no international pressure on India, the Pakistani military establishment gets even more desperate to show that they can strike back. So it's a dangerous situation, but definitely the military is doing all the thinking here, not Imran Khan for sure.
Well, I have one quick question for Air Marshal Inamdar. Obviously, Pakistan has
made
army. Yes, made weak arguments about the fact that this didn't really happen, and we have proof. In fact, the last thing that was said in the press conference by the Pakistan defense minister was, we have helicopters ready, we'll take the international media with us to show you the location, but right now the weather is not good, so we can't take you there. So actually, all of the arguments were fairly weak, but you understand the aircraft in question really well. There is, of course, electro-optics of photographs, of videos that would have been made through the entire operation. So all of the things that Pakistan says right now will obviously be false and could very easily be proven as so if India chooses even to acknowledge any of these statements with a response.
You see, the operative word is PSDA, Post-Strike Damage Assessment. That is the proof of the pudding. What happened is captured in photographs and footage, everything. And you also have pictures taken from satellites. All this put together, it's the ultimate proof that something happened on the ground the way India is claiming. And if and when the government of India or the Air Force deems it appropriate, they will bring it out. And once that is brought out, I don't think there will be any room to doubt what happened. You're right, they have to have that proof, and they will have that proof. You can't send a strike without having that substantive amount of proof about the damage assessment. It's integral to the plans, integral to the action. It's been so for a long, long time. It has to have been captured in photographs and films.
So obviously, Vinay, there are photographs, there is film. The government will decide when it is appropriate to actually release all of that. And it's also, I think, interesting here to view that the government has not acknowledged any of the things that Pakistan has said during the day about, oh, this didn't happen, or oh, there's, none of the eyewitnesses will give you any proof, because our Air Force will have all of the documentation. It will have, the Air Marshal was telling us, it will have photographs, it will have video, we'll have satellite imagery, which, like you've pointed out, is much better now than it was in the past. India has great satellite capability as well. So in terms of embarrassing Pakistan, outsmarting Pakistan, both in technology, in skill, and here in intent, Pakistan has lost the day, hasn't it?
Oh, they have. And the satellite imagery superiority that India enjoys, and a massive superiority that they enjoy, would have come in handy even in the planning of this thing. Because remember, Pakistan has been shifting around its terror camps in Muzaffarabad and other parts of POK, and to have precise information requires that kind of high-resolution imagery. And India has a huge superiority over it. In the last 7-8 years or so, we've made huge progress and rapid strides on that for sure. Remember, listen, Pakistan as a country has this, even during Kargil, and I think Saikat will bear us out because he was there, even during Kargil, Pakistan went to the extent of actually burying their own uniformed soldiers to hide the casualty number. They've gone to that extent. They have known to have done that. They have known to have not allowed any evidence to remain of how many people actually died in that. So they've done something as ghastly as I can say it, as that to actually prevent evidence. So there is no guarantee that they wouldn't do the same thing again.
So you weren't at all surprised by the fact that they denied everything this morning?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, that's the only option they have. What else can they say? I mean, look, they denied it, but just about an hour and a half back, Asif Ghafoor actually accepted it that the Indian planes came 4 or 5 miles, not much inside. So they've also accepted it.
Yes.
The only quibble can be over the number of casualties, but then that's easy. I mean, in a mountainous region, which is inaccessible, it's away from civilian areas, Pakistani army is entirely capable of actually hiding the number of people who've died there, burying their bodies somewhere around and not showing it to the international community, which they are claiming they will take them and show. So that's not to be trusted at all. I think the real fact is that they have acknowledged India has gone inside. The Indian Army Air Force has struck them, and the fact that they are now sounding that rattle tells you that the desired impact of what should have been done has happened.
I think the other thing we must acknowledge, and Narendra Taneja is here, the sort of communication that came out of our government today was so very well controlled and orchestrated and mature. There were various ministries that were involved in the planning of this operation, but communication entirely handled by the Ministry of External Affairs, the Foreign Secretary making the statement initially to begin with. Then we had Sushma Swaraj, we understood was the minister was speaking to other members of the international community, very maturely, very carefully handled. And for that, again, we must acknowledge the work done by the Indian government, Mr. Taneja.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, you know, there is a difference between India and Pakistan. India is respected the world over for peace, for very mature conduct of international relations, and for showing patience. I mean, the world acknowledges, they know it, that the action that we have taken, and we repeatedly said at the level of the, you know, Foreign Secretary and others, that for us, this is a non-military action. We were forced to take it, because they were planning to attack us. So in self-defense, we had to do it. We have not attacked any military installation in Pakistan, a military or economic and civil. We haven't done that. And we don't have any, you know, terrorist camps in India that in return, for instance, if they want to retaliate, they will attack. We don't have any such things. Yeah. Now the point is, basically, there are 3 broad points I would like to make here. Number one is that, you know, look at the reality on the ground in Pakistan. Their economy is in a very bad shape. It's in shambles. They have hard currency, you know, hardly for 7 to 8 weeks. Even beyond that, they would either need to go to China or to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia would also tell them the same thing, that look, don't escalate. China has already, in a way, very diplomatically conveyed a message to them. After all, China has invested so much in Pakistan. They would not like any kind of escalation. And their China-Pakistan economic corridor actually passes through the area that is known, what they call whatever, but we call it is our Kashmir, is you know, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. They have invested, so they probably are not going to tell them. They're going to tell them don't escalate. And the second point is that look at the international reaction. France, you just mentioned, look at Australia, what Australia had to say, look at other Western countries, and also even China. Our foreign minister is on way to China. She will be in China in next 3 hours and talking with the top leadership in China, also with the Russian leadership, because she is there to attend, you know, India, Russia and China summit. Now, the third important point here is that we have conveyed it to the world repeatedly. The world knows it so well that as far as we are concerned, we are telling Pakistan, we've been saying for years now, please, you know, shut down all those terror camps, those terror schools, jihadi schools, these terror factories. So we have been telling this, and now we have been compelled, we have been forced to this action. We have nothing against the people of Pakistan, absolutely nothing. But they have to shut down these terror camps and all that. If they can't do it, if they think they're helpless, then we have to take action.
Absolutely, and to take action, India has, I want to thank my panelists for being kind enough to give us your time, especially on a day like this. In conclusion, India has taken very decisive action, and India has stepped into Pakistan territory to send a very clear message that we will not tolerate terror, and we will do whatever is necessary and whatever it takes to shut down terror completely. The Indian Air Force proving superior in every way, in skill, in equipment, and in intent. The Indian government, backed with the opposition, showing a united front that India will do what it takes to protect her people. Well, simply put, Imran Khan's bowling has been lobbed for a 6 by the Indian Air Force. Today he lost. Today India won. Thanks for watching.